That's right, Charles. Hexagon. 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 Now the question is, how the fuck? I think we're not gonna do this. I'm gonna do square map. Yes, there are hexagons. Hexagon. It's a little annoying because it's a completely new logic system to have to work with. I hate this term reflection. I don't know what it means. Okay, in this case it means literal reflection. Okay. Because there's reflection in programming too, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means. This guy's website is really good, by the way. Red Blob Games. He has tons of interactive coding segments and guides. I feel like in this case, Hexagon is exponentially more work with minimum payout. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, right? Squares don't always work. Squares are 1,000 times easier though, but not actually that much harder. Just hexagons. The advantage of hexagons is that you can move in diagonals without it actually costing more. Because every direction in a hexagonal system is forward. While if you're using squares, you can only move right, left, up, and down without it being mathematically an incorrect movement. Because if I want to move up here, diagonally here, this is actually like 1.4 times the distance as it is over here. And there's no good way to actually deal with that. Like, the only way you can deal with that is to either not deal with it at all, or you create some kind of AP system that just you have like 100 AP or something, or 60, and then moving over here costs like 1.4, and here's 1. That way you can create like a kind of semi-natural way of moving over squares, but I do think hexagons beat squares when we're talking about making like abstract land maps. And that's what we're doing. Pathfinding. That would be a pain in the ass though, I think. A star for hexagons. Vector 1-1, Vector 2-1-1 has a greater magnitude than 1. Yeah. It's simple. A line from the center of a square to the center of a square here. Here it says It should be 16. Right, yeah, it's 16. And then if we go up here, 23. 16. 24, something like that. 16. 23.3, I think. Or maybe that's the one. I'm not sure. No, I think it's there. 24. Yeah. Because going to the edge of a cube is longer than going to the corners. Further than to the edge. It's just how it is. So like the only way to do it any other way is to do hexagons or do free movement. You know, like Phantom Brave or Makai Kingdom. Thinking draw a square, draw a line from corner to corner. It's now 2 triangles. 2 sides of one triangle match the sides of the square. The hypotenuse length is more complicated. I don't even know what we're talking about right now. But yes. A square is 2 triangles. So the first thing to do here now is scroll up on this 400-page long guide page. Is this, the coordinates. So we need to create a hexagon coordinate system. But I think it's just going to be a 2-dimensional array, and that's it. I think. The same as saying the magnitude is longer. Than the x or y of a vector 2. Exact length requires the formula. Yeah. So QSR. I wonder, is the QSR coordinate system the best way to go about it? Basically, it means that you have to have 3 axes. Instead of having x and y, which is up and or vertical and horizontal, you now have 3 axes. You see, you have an x basically. It's the blue one moving across, but then you have 2 y axes, kind of. One that's moving up to the right and one that's moving up to the left. That way, if you increment those axes up there, you can move this way. But the issue with that is that I think this kind of system really only makes sense when you are using an hexagonal board. Because, like... Or am I wrong? Oh, maybe it does make sense. Kind of. A square building could maybe invalidate spaces that are half covered. You know, right now we're just figuring out what kind of coordinate system to use and how it would make sense, because you can use it this way, but I think it has to be translated in some way either way. Because at the end of the day, it's just going to be a 2D array. I mean, it doesn't have to be a 2D array. It could literally be anything. It could be a dictionary. But I don't think that's good. I think anything that isn't a 2D array is probably bad in terms of speed. But I'm just trying to think how this would make sense, right? Because I'm just thinking of if you decrement like R here, we'll move to the left. Then you have to be able to check if like decrementing the what is that? If you decrement the Q, like when does that actually exit the map? And when does that? Because you don't just have like a minimum Q. Either way, let's go in here and we'll write something. Let's make a new folder. Okay, let's not make a new folder. Let's call it system, maybe. And then here, world, and in the world we'll have a, what should we call it? A grid matrix. Or should this be internal? I don't know. I don't know why it always starts as internal. But let's go with that. That way I don't have to change it every time. So then the grid matrix should contain a matrix. But it's not a... I mean, I guess. I like the word matrix, it's cool. It shouldn't... No, actually it should be. It actually should be an integer. I'm not really sure how to handle, like, things. I know that's very specific, but, like, let's say you have a matrix. You have a 2D array, and it contains your tiles. Right, it's a 2D array here. And then you also want it to contain things. Meaning, like, let's say there's like an event or something that's happening in there, or there's whatever. I think it should be like a... like a content container or something. And then here we have a public content container array. Fuck you. I think that's potentially a good solution. Because what we can do then is we can just have the matrix be an integer. And that way the integer just points to a tile type, and then we just draw the tile type based on what number is in the matrix. And the content matrix is then the same size as the matrix. Which means we should have a public vector2 public int x public int y. And if the content matrix is the same size as the matrix, we can then just, if we ever need to access the matrix, we can just check the content matrix and say, is this entry in the content matrix null? If it isn't null, then we access it, and then we read whatever is inside of it, whatever that ends up being here. And, but what should be contained inside of the content container should also just be basically a list of indices too. Or should it be a dictionary? Maybe a dictionary is smarter. Because the idea here is that with this, we can have a matrix that matches the int matrix in terms of size, so that the indices match up. But and then you can just access it and read it. But it also means that we have a bunch of memory that's just kind of locked up for no reason. So if you instead just do public dictionary. Now this needs to be a vector to int, but I don't have that because I haven't implemented it. It's a vector to int, and it just contains a list of int. That way you can have content. And the way this works then is that you just make like every single thing in the game has an index. Which is a little tricky. It could be like a tuple. I think a tuple would be based. Right. Oh, actually, there are tuples. Can you just do that? Is that a class? No. Right, and basically what this would be then is, because we have a tuple here, which we can change into a vector too, but it doesn't really matter. It can be a tuple. It's kind of the same thing. It's just that the tuple doesn't have math, so which it doesn't need. The matrix size probably might need some math, but who knows. Basically then, what this means is that we will have a coordinate, and if the coordinate contains anything, we then add a list of indices to that key inside of the dictionary. That way we can just access the grid there. The only thing I don't like here is I don't know. I think like, okay, how big might a world be? Like the world in the world in Shadow Empire is like 200 times 100. That's 20,000 entries. I think that's way too small, personally. I would like to have like 10 times that, potentially. So if we say it's 10 times that, just to use that as an example, Alright. The robot is telling me that accessing a dictionary with a size of 200,000 is nothing. And so we should actually, let's see, okay, here it says C# specific nuances. Get hashcode quality matters. C# uses the keys get hashcode for bucketing. Built-in types string, int, GUID, etc. have excellent hash functions. If you're using a custom class as a key, make sure you override get hashcode and equals properly. A bad implementation is the most common cause of dict slowdowns. How does a tuple hash? Oh no, he didn't understand. But yeah, we can just use an int here. It's a little annoying, but it's fine. That's just a conversion. Because any array, no matter how many dimensions it has, can be accessed in a one-dimensional manner, right? So we just need to translate that there. Yeah. Dude, all these autocompletes are so annoying. Text editor. Inline suggestions. Is this one it? Hold on. This is just so annoying. I have to turn this off. I don't know which one it is though. Inline. What about Copilot? Is Copilot enabled? Oh my god! It's impossible to find anything! Control Alt Space? Really? Not true, you bastard. Text editor. Languages. C#. IntelliSense. Show completion list after a character is typed. No, that's not it. Oh. Which one is it? Show completion item filters. Highlight matching portions of completion. Oh my god, which one is it? It's so bad. Show completion list after a character is typed. Is that the one? Are you sure? Not the one. Let's see. Show parameter information. Doesn't exist. Show parameter. Statement completion. What is this setting? Q? I don't have Copilot. Tools. Options. Whole line. Fuck you. Are we done? Thank Jesus Christ. Oh! There's always something. Let's call this one initialize. And then here we say this dot matrix size equals matrix size matrix new int matrix size. Wait, how do you matrix size dot item 1 matrix size dot item 2. Or y matrix dot matrix size dot item 2 x matrix size dot item 1 matrix xy equals -1 or it could be a 0, but if it's going to be a 0 then the matrix needs to be a uint, and then 0 is actually blank. I would be okay with it being a uint, I think. And then content dictionary. The content dictionary is already created anew. So this is all we need to do, and then here we say initialize 0 0 0, and here it's initialize matrix size, right? And then we need a... So now here I should open my other project for a sec. But it uses Unity vectors and shit, it's annoying. But yeah, I have a bunch of functions there that are good. Also, I've already implemented vectors before, but So I could just go and grab them from another monogame project here. But yeah, this is what we need. Now, I would just copy this whole thing, but it uses vector 3 ints and shit all over the place, so it's just gonna cause errors, so... I'm just thinking. I want to make a helper function script here too. I don't know what to name the file. I'm just gonna name them Robin F. I don't think this needs a namespace. This should just exist. And then... return content list. No, what should we call this? Fetch hex content. And then that should take a vector 2, but right now we're just using a tuple. It doesn't need to be a unit. Like that. And that's where we need to say content dictionary dot get try get get value. And here we're gonna say list int temp list and then try get value, which is a key, but the int is then a index 2D to 1D, and then we have an the thing I dislike the most with tuples, I'll be honest, is that it's called item 1, item 2. But it's fine. And then it needs an out, which is temp list. What's wrong? Out temp list. And I'll be right back. This should actually return like a new list. New return new list from the temp list. Right? Like it's a little, right? You think this is unnecessary? Are you sure? Maybe it's fine. Yeah, I suppose. Because this is local scope. So once we return it and it exits the local scope, this reference will be deleted and the returned list will be the only reference to the list. So yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah. Something like that. Now, what should an entity contain? I think an entity should contain a position. System, what should this be? We have world, entities, or should we call it like objects? Objects. And then should we just call it an entity or a base entity? I'm gonna call it an entity. And an entity should contain a position. Which again, it should be a vector 2. We have to implement the vector 2 int, but it should be easy. Let's just see here. Where would you have structs? Just in system, maybe? Hello, GetUser00. Do you think AI could take our jobs? Sure. Something like that could be fine. Do you make it castable? Let's see. Explicit, implicit. Explicit operator. Vector 2 int. Vector 2. Oh, vector 2. No. Turn new vector to int. Static implicit operator. Never seen this before. Go to int b. Wait, why would I do this? Wait, truncates floats. Isn't that wrong? Wait, what is... Let me see here. C online compiler, right? And then if we write float test equals 1.6f, and then we write float test 2 equals minus 1.6f. And then if we print that, and then we print that, yeah, that's correct, right? Yeah. They both have to round down towards 0. Hello, Circle. Because you have seal or you have floor, but floor is a problem sometimes. It really depends on what you need the math to do. Because floor will push this minus 1.9 to 2, while a truncation will push it to 1. So when you're doing mathematics, the truncation is actually more correct. But if you want like a stairway, for example, type formation that goes from positive to negative, then you need to have floor, I think. Yeah. Because otherwise when you get to 0, it'll push it up to 0 on both 0.5 and minus 0.5. And then you get a little plateau there. Probably not going to go for a whole lot of programming today. I just wanted to get started a bit. Return new vector to Right? I think I actually don't want an implicit cast. I can comment it. Because the implicit cast is a little risky, I think, because then you might do a multiplication or something that results in integers when you don't really mean that. So I think having to explicitly cast the vector 2 to a vector 2 int and vice versa is fine. Yeah. All right. So a entity should have a public vector to int the struct shouldn't be inside of a class. That's the thing. Now the issue is, now we have to fend against 3 different vectors. We have 4 vector 2 variants. But does mine always win? Like, how does that work? Is there some kind of order? Because I don't want to have to type like hexes every time, but it seems to work. It uses mine. Alright. So that's a position. The entity now has a position. set that to position, and then we call initialize, which I think will do literally nothing actually. The entity is just an entity. It's not really meant to do anything other than just allow for pooling objects within the same list. So then we have objects. And then what kind of object should we do? I think it's either that or... Because what I can do is I can make the object what you can do is you can make an object and make it inherit from entity. Or we create a component system. I think maybe a component system is better. And then here you have to do something like public dictionary int component. But that's everything uses something called component. What should I call it? Component. Let's try naming it component. And then we just have that. And then here we have component. It seems to at least choose mine first, so maybe it's okay to call it component. Component dictionary. As such. And then you need to say then we need a list. And it's gonna be a... What is it called? Component type. This is how you do it? I don't think this is necessarily gonna work. Basically, I need a lookup table for components or for classes. What do you do? How do you do that? Should it be a dictionary or should... I don't think an enum is gonna work because I can't be like component equals 1 because that's just gonna be an entry called component, like component types dot component. So that doesn't work. So in system, we're gonna need something called like globals or something. And this is a static. And then here we have a public static dictionary. Is that possible? That contains a key, which is a class. And it returns an integer. Component index. Or no, it should be a component. It should take a component. Component index dictionary equals new dictionary. And then it's gonna say like here then we have a component. And it can have a public int ID. Well, let's not make it public. Let's just make it an ID. Public int ID get return ID. Component. Whoops. That was meant to be a folder. Components. And then in components, we'll add, what should we say? Just something to test. Like we already have. Man, should the transform... Should we do that? And then instead the entity doesn't have a position. And then inside transform we can say it's got a public position. For now, at least. Like that. And then in the globals here, we can then say transform zero. Yeah, it's a type. It needs to be a type. So how do we do that? How do I store my component classes? Transform is a inherits from component as class type references in my dictionary. I want to have a lookup table where I can translate a class type into an index. It should just be type, I guess. But how can I make sure that the type is inherited from component? You can't enforce that at the dictionary level. You can wrap it in a helper method that enforces it. Yeah, that's fine. So where T is component. Okay, so then here we need a public static int get component index that then takes a type which then says, so that means this shouldn't be public, but this should say where T is component. There. Then we'll say return component index dictionary dot get value. Try get value. Should 0 be a false value, or should -1 be a false value? So then we shouldn't return here. We need to try get. Try get value from the key, which is a component, which is then type, and then we need an int value equals -1 value out. I don't know what happens with the out. Like if the try get value fails, I think I think value doesn't get written to, but I'm not sure, because I don't think it doesn't get initialized here. I'm pretty sure you have to always initialize, or, well, you have to declare the value that you use as your out. No, you can do that. Can you do this? Is this valid? No? So you can declare it here, but then it's just gonna be 0, right? So if I think this is safer. Then here we can say if... Oh, yeah, a little bit at least. I just wanted to get started. Because the start sucks. I need to pee. Right now I'm writing an ECS, I think. Is that what it's called? Component system. No. Bathroom. Be right back. It's just what happens. See? It's what happens. It's what happens when you start up the stream 10 minutes after you wake up and you start up your day with a big cup of coffee with butter in it. It's what happens. Alright, we're trying to fetch an index here. Based on a component. So transform. This would be like type of transform, I believe. And then we are fetching the value type and then if the fetch is successful, if success, then we return value, else well, okay, let's just do this then. Return -1, right? So we don't need to do that. We say int out int value. If success, we return value, else we return -1. And -1 is a failure. And this here exists in order to be able to say public component get component p type component type where how's it written? Where t component then we shall say return we have to say int component index equals component it's in globals dot get component index component type component and then we're gonna say component to return equals well you just do bool success equals component dictionary dot try get value component index out component value and then we just do if success return value else return null. I guess. I don't really know how we should handle error. It's something I've never really actually learned how to handle, like, do error management. Like, let's say we try to get this component, and we fetch a component that doesn't exist. What should I do? Should I just return a null? And should I always just check for if null? You could out the value in the outer function and just return the bool success instead. Oh yeah, you mean we also do an out? Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it does work, but it's not necessarily quite as good as this in some ways, because if you have this get component, you can just do like get component and then dot, you know, like you do in Unity, where you just do get component dot and then you type in the thing and then it just works that way. But I don't know if this is enough to do that. It might not be. It might be, though. I can't understand namespace. I don't need to use it. Why should we use it? You don't need to use it. It's just a way to organize your things, really. Then it's just null check component like you would with get component. The main reason I thought of the out is your function that returns an int. You don't have to remember -1 is invalid. You just get the bool. Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll do that. Because... And then we return a bool there. Because... hashing is better anyway. Like you even with the get component solution in Unity, you don't really want to use that. And here we just do return success. Or we just do return this, right? I don't know like what they do in Unity, but like it's not caching it in like the update is slow as shit in Unity. But I don't know what else they do in the get component. And it's not that big of a deal because you can just declare the variable in the out when you call this, so that way it's just like instantly cached locally anyway. Get component for each is an array. Of course it does. Of course. The Unity scene system is so trash. I don't know. It's not that bad, but it's like there's so many things that I don't know. It's yeah. There are many weird things in Unity. But that's what happens when you write an engine that's meant to be generalized. So then we remove position as well. But what we will do is we can still take a position here, but then what we'll say is in initialize, let's always add a transform. So public bool add component type where t component component dictionary dot try add component type no. Here's it's the opposite, right? So here now it needs to be a component. So here we need to say the type is globals.get component index component type I spelled it wrong. But then here we have a type. How do I do that? So no, I think this is a bad way of doing it. We should do this. Int index. We fetch the index, and then we're gonna actually check if component dictionary dot contains key index, then we're gonna return false. Else, we will try to add, assuming that it's a correct index. I mean, we still kind of need to do the thing. Try add key index. Here we should check if globals dot if index equals -1, then return false. How do you do the debug.log here? It's monogame debug log. Debug.writeLine. Debug.writeLine. Well, so much for that. Using monogame. Using monogame dot what? Or should it just be console? Monogame learn documentation. Search debug dot write line. No? Write line. The material class. In monogame, what should I use to write the equivalent of debug.log in Unity? Just console.writeLine? Question mark? System.diagnostics.debug.writeLine. Is the index does not match an existing component. Error. Index index. Wait, no, that's not what we're writing here. Component type does not match an existing component. Maybe. Something like that. And then I'm gonna open the window. We're reaching the 2-hour mark. That is brain death territory. All right, so we're trying to add a component. We're trying to get the component. If the index is -1, then this breaks. We return false. If the dictionary already contains the value, then we say error. Entity already contains component type. Else now what am I worried about here? It shouldn't even need to be a try-add here. Like, how could it potentially fail? Like, we've already checked. Because if we have an index here, that means we have a valid component type. And here we're checking if the component type already exists on the object, then we can't add it. So that means that here, this doesn't need a try add. This just needs add. Index. New. Here's the thing. How do you create you need like a, how do I instantiate a new type of a new instance of a class from a type of class? Component activator dot create instance. Then it takes a type. And that's component type. So this, wait. This doesn't need to take a component type. Hold on. Because we already have T, right? So this can just be T. And then you type of T. Or we can say type equals type of T. And same thing here, right? Like, this can just be T. Get component index doesn't need a type. It just takes T. Type of T. Okay, that's the only place that actually needs the type. Right? And then return true. And then for whatever reason here, we have a fallback that's return false. It can never return false, never mind. This is the final else. I think that should be right. But then, what should the pattern look like going forward? Like, if we just have a flat entity, right, like this, right? That means that we shouldn't really be creating classes that inherit from entities, should we? So then it becomes more like creating functions that return entity configurations or something like that. So we need like a static class that just contains a bunch of entity configuration returns. That just like create light source, for example, and then it just creates an entity, initializes it, adds the transform, and then it adds whatever components a light source needs, and then it just returns it after it's initialized those. I think. And then here we say in initialize add component T I think a class should always take a position for an entity. I think so. Even if that position is just like meaningless. I think what we could do is do like this. That would be okay. And then initialize always takes a vector to int position. Hello, Spider Pig. No, we're doing just a little bit of side project stuff right now. Wait, what? There. There we go. And then once the transform is then done, then we can say I think it would be okay to do this public transform. This is what they do in Unity. And then here we say component equals that. And then here we say we add a component to the dictionary. And then here we say add component, transform, and then we apply it to transform. Cannot convert from out hexes system objects.components.transform to out hexes system objects component. Why? Do I need to write some bullshit for this to be able to? No. And then we go back here. And it's saying... One thing that is actually better in VS Code is that this here has a copy button. You can just copy the error. Here you have to actually open the error page and then go and copy it there. Not a big deal, but... Change out component to out T. Add component out T. Okay, that fixes it. Why does it say that transform is like redundant here? And why doesn't it say why? I don't like when it does that. It's like... Like, no, this is redundant. Okay. Why? Fuck you. Component default. It's suggesting default instead of null. Since component is a class, default T will actually resolve to null at runtime anyway, so there's no behavioral difference here. But using default is the conventional generic pattern because it compiles whether T is a class or struct. It makes intent clear, giving me the 0 value or whatever T is. It changed his mind. It said that it was fine to do null. Okay. Yeah, I think so. I don't know if I like this default, but it doesn't really matter because it's the bool that really determines whether we're gonna use it or not. Yeah, I think that should be fine. Public static vector to int 0 equals new vector to int 0, 0. Okay, no. Really? How is this handled in Unity? Static. I mean, that's what I'm doing, more or less. Like, we have a struct vector to int. So I gave it a static vector to 0 equals this. But it's saying that the default parameter must be a compile time constant. What's the difference? Compile time constant. What? Okay, it doesn't actually work. Really? So it seems. Well, whatever. An entity needing the position is no biggie. I think that's perfectly fine. Okay, well, I think we have an entity with an ECS here. Alright, now what? We have a grid matrix. We have an entity. We have no way of rendering anything, really. And then, of course, you have the main here. Where we're not doing anything at all. What if we open my old... one of my old monogame for thingies? I think maybe this one. Maybe we even open a solution. Why is it taking so long? Here. Right, if we can steal some stuff from here. Actually, might have to steal it from the other one. Let's see. This one? Because that one uses graphics. And I don't want to do that this day. I don't want to implement graphics today because... Actually, how are we writing? Did I write a shader here or something? Tile renderer. Game manager.initialize. Content manager. Yeah, here I'm just drawing from a texture using the sprite batch. And that's what I don't know how exactly that's gonna work out. If it just works exactly the same. Because when you're using squares to render your tiles, you just find the index of the tile that you're trying to render, and then you just render that box in the correct position. But when you're rendering hexes, the hex isn't square. You know, it's got transparency on all sides. So the question is if we just use the same method, but it's just kind of offset for every other. And then you kind of just like... How do I put it? How do we even draw a hex here? I don't know how big a hex is. Right. Oh, that's an octagon. Fuck. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about. So now we have one hexagon tile. So now we need to render them. Then we render the first one here, right? Bam. But then again, the issue is that this is all like transparency on the sides here. So I guess we just need to tell the renderer to just draw it like this, and then we draw another hexagon here. And then when we get to the next row, we just kind of overlap them in the renderer itself so that it draws like this. And then we just rely on the fact that the tile sheet has transparency in it to make sure it doesn't actually overwrite what was written before. That's my concern, that we just kind of do it like that, and then the next layer just kind of writes it like itself like that. But it'll still need to do like a write operation on all of the outside areas, kind of. I think. But I think that's fine. It's just gonna have to be that way. Drawing some tiles is not gonna be that big of a deal. And in that case, this should be pretty easy. It's just about clever sprite batch draw calls then. Render the world. Anyway, we have this is a script where... What are we doing here? What's up? I thought I was writing text. That's what I was looking for. I just wanted to see draw string. That's how you do it. Because then what I would like to do is I think this is game one, right? And I think, do I want to handle the game in here? Because like, see here, you have initialize, load content, you have update, you have draw, you have everything here, right? But I think in update, I actually want to have a script called like game controller or something that then this executes, and in there all of the game logic is handled. And this is kind of like the cogs that are attached to the game logic. I don't know if I should do that. Maybe not. Maybe we just handle it in this update. And this is the game controller. I don't know. I think this being its own layer is good, because then you can handle load content and shit here in a way that is less cluttered. So I think we should have a system dot main controller. I like main controller. And then in main controller we have a public void update. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And that way... this can be the game itself, and then we can have another controller for UI that then just runs after this. And it's called in the same fashion here afterwards in each step. Perhaps. Kind of... yeah, I think so. Because that way you can have a UI, and whenever you run an input, you check the UI first, and then if it passes the UI, then you can just handle game controls inside of the game world. What does a click do if you have managed to get by the UI? For example. And so, here we want a... and then here we do load content. Initialize. Like that. Then we do load content. Then we can do main control. We can have load content in main controller too. Public main controller. Public void load content. I do think it should have a sprite batch. Perhaps. Unless I do the whole world controller solution inside of the main controller. We're doing in Legends of Terrestria. I think we're not going to do much more. Now change this to vector 2. But I don't know if a vector 2 is actually better when I can just have a tuple. I think it should be a vector 2. that. We create a new player there. But then the issue is that we now need a way to control the player, but no, we don't need that. We really just need, if I can just draw like a number here, I'll be happy for today. But they've changed how draw works, I think. Or have they? You see, draw here. There's no sprite batch, so let's see. Because I'm using the same solution here. Draw. Sprite batch is created there. So then here, it needs to say sprite batch.begin. Main controller dot draw. Sprite batch. Game time. Sprite batch. What is it? This one. Sprite batch. Then this says something like this. Here's what I was doing here. And this is accessing the system. So we can access it just by writing that, I think. It's game one. And there we are setting a sprite font. But unfortunately, I have to load that, which means we have to... I think we might have to use the content pipeline. In load content, we're saying Arial font equals content.load sprite font my font. That's what I wrote. And that means, I think that We probably need a font there. Yeah, we have a my font X and B there. Sprite font dot sprite font. Anyone notice anything? Where's the content manager? I'm not sure I have a content manager. Also, help me update monogame for my project. I only downloaded the extension. Do I need anything else to update monogame? Update the NuGet package in your project. Content. It's this guy. Oh, it works. Let's not bother with updating monogame right now, but okay. Sprite font. It goes here? I feel like this has changed. Something like that. But no, here it's called, it's my font.xnb. So in here, this is Arial.xnb. Okay, sure. That gives us Arial then. Okay, so we don't have access to that. And then this is a string. And we're gonna say test. New vector 2 0 0. Cannot convert from hexes.system.vector2 to Microsoft XNA framework.vector2. See, this is what's going to be annoying. But we can we can make it just be able to implicitly convert to a vector to an XNA vector 2 just because. Or actually, does this exist? No. Yeah, because the issue is that Microsoft XNA framework vector 2. I mean, what I could do is I could make a vector 2 int and then use XNA's vector 2 and not have my own vector 2, and then just make that compatible with their vector 2. That could be a solution too, I suppose. But either way, it's not that big of a deal, I think. Now, are we doing anything here? All right, we have a test value. Then we can go back to here. So now it says test, right? Now what we need is we need to print the player position plus player.transform.position. Hexes.system.vector2int. Based. It doesn't know how to actually read and print that. Fuck. Okay, so there we have an actual reason to use a vector 2, but that should be... we just need to figure out okay, so now we have player position 0 0. Now we need controls. And that's where things become a little annoying. So we're gonna need an input. And the question is, here in the update, should we take like a keyboard input there, or... No, I don't think so. We should just read it from game. I'll be right back. Now this is not... What I need to do here isn't really that easy, so I might kind of just half-ass it right now. So... We need a control thing here. Let's see how that is usually done here. So... Here, in the main controller, that's where I handle input. Handle input does what? It's not that easy. It's almost that easy, but we need to add a Z to this. Now, I'm not so sure we actually want to use a vector 3 here. I think we actually want to use a vector 4. Yeah, probably. Or a vector 2, but this being implemented is fine, like this. Wait, how do you do this? Okay, so if we're checking if it's not true. It's the same again, yeah. Does it even need the brackets? I don't think so. This is float. But it would be okay with an int as well. Okay. Anyway, we're not going to do that. It's going to be a vector too, so that was all meaningless work, but the vectors are nice to have anyway. Let's not do a collision check. And then here we'll apply the movement vector to the player. How is it done here? Yeah. But here, let's just say player.transform.position plus equals movement vector. Oh, I don't have a plus operator at all. Surprising. Yeah. And then there we add a movement vector. And then here we'll do handle input. I feel like something is different. Like I'm using VS 2026 now, and I usually use VS 2022. And I don't know, like maybe I'm just being a retard, but I feel like enter use for me when I'm using 2022, I feel like enter autocompletes things more often than it's doing here. So I just end up with things that don't autocomplete here. But I could be wrong. So in update, we are doing handle input. So now if we play, we can now move the player. But that's not correct, because we're not going to have a player in the sense that you move it with a keyboard like that. So what I have to do is, but I think we'll stop here. I cannot be arsed to do that right now because it's going to be a pain in the ass. But basically, we have to create a hex position handler that I'm going to bind incrementation and decrementation to QWE and AST. That way we can increment the player position in the hex axes here, in QRS here. But that incrementation needs to be translated to a new position in our square grid matrix. And I just don't feel like doing that right now. It's a pain in the ass. I don't think it's gonna be a big deal. It's actually very easy, but it also, you need to do it, right? Because it's basically, when you're down here, if this is 0, 0, when we increment R, that's just going to be like incrementing X by 1. We're just going to increment X by 1, and that's it. And then incrementing Q or S, right? That is incrementing both X and Y depending on our current elevation in the data structure. So here, for example, this here, if you imagine these side ones don't exist, these hexes here are all x0, right? So here, when we increment s by 1, that will increment y by 1. But now if I increment s, it will increment y and x by 1. Right? So it's actually super easy. It's basically just like if y equals, if y modulo 1 equals 0, then incrementing s means y plus 1. If y modulo 1 equals 1, then incrementing s equals x and y plus 1. And then here, when modulo y is y modulo 1 equals 0, then incrementing q doesn't work, but it would be y plus 1 x minus 1, right? So here it would be only y plus 1. And that's really all there is to it. It's not that complicated. It's just annoying. And I don't want to do it right now, because we've been going at it for 3.5 hours already, and that's enough for a Sunday. I might go for a walk. And then we might play some more Shadow Empires, perhaps. I don't think we're gonna get some monsters. I shouldn't buy some monsters. Had too many. But yes, after this, we need to do this. Then we need to create a tile system so that we can render it on screen. And now I have been writing almost exclusively my own compute shader to write to the screen. So I don't actually know how just using Unity's sprite batch system, or no, Monogame's sprite batch, if that's like just fine. Because if it is, then it'll be really easy. It'll just be like writing the tiles that are on the screen by fetching their art from a texture. At least to begin with. But we need to index tile types, and then we'll see. Then we can try to create a world that has like some dirt, some grass, and some water. I walked to get some pizza. Sounds good, Despace. But then there's the question that we have to figure out, really, is like what exactly the scale of everything should be. And there's also an issue of like the fact that it's pixel art and like zooming pixel art, because a grand strategy game is definitely a game where you want to have zooming. But zooming pixel art is kind of ass. But it might be doable. We'll see. And adding like custom details as well, like roads and stuff, but we'll have to think of that later. But yeah, do you use Monogame? Yeah, right now I'm using Monogame. For this. Normally I use Unity, but I want to get away from Unity, so whenever we do a side project, I tend to use Monogame instead. And I haven't really gotten far with using Monogame much, so But yeah, that will be that. We'll be back in a bit. Until then, thanks for hanging. Have a good day. Bye-bye.